Hey everyone, hiring top AI research talent is really, really hard. Comp packages are jumping from hundred to billions of dollars. And today we're going to talk about how to hire AI researchers using AI. So we're going to be testing out DustTT, an agent builder AI workflow tool, and we're going to review the landing page and then automate the workflow of hiring AI researchers. So let's jump in.
Hoping to give a bank account to our agents, right?
Okay, so right off the bat, their headline is Transform How Work Gets Done, Building Agents in Minutes. And it makes it very clear that you want to connect to a company's knowledge base and tools, and then powered by obviously LLMs and AI models. One thing I do want to highlight is they do kick off a video, and it does look like this video was recorded probably in 2023, given that they're highlighting GPT-4 and Claude 3, not even Claude 3.5. I would recommend sort of updating that for modern use cases, but they do highlight the organizations that are using the product, and they do highlight three big use cases. So three back office use cases are sales, marketing, and customer support, which are very clear use cases where you'd need to hook into a knowledge base and then use tools to update that information. So sales is an obvious one. You can hook into HubSpot, you can hook into Salesforce, get information, you can dump the transcript of a call. Very similar use cases around customer support, and then for marketing, creating that content, creating consistent brand messaging.
Yeah, like a lot of these AI agent builders, I'd say the promise is very nice at the beginning. I love to see that we're trying to help operate an entire enterprise. But I think, as you said, 2023 in the AI field, if you're not updating every few months, you're probably a little bit behind the capabilities.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to highlight is we reviewed a couple other agent building products, and it tended to be more on the IT ops side, the DevOps side. This is clearly more on the more sales / customer support / marketing side.
That's right.
Cool.
They use the OS primitive as well. This is a little bit overused, but I do think that the concept is sound, which is, hey, we're trying to give building blocks and applications for your agents to use. In this case, it's integrations and applications and a few things like that we'll get into.
Yeah, and I would say they highlight the value prop of creating agents very quickly, connecting to tools, connecting to knowledge bases. One thing I would just highlight is it's not as much outcomes driven. It's not, hey, close these sales, close tickets at this speed. So clearly a choice there, but maybe it's because they're trying to go for breadth. But I definitely like seeing outcomes-based headlines and information on landing pages. Similar to N8N, clearly like integrations here are important. People get work done in several tools, so highlighting integrations is pretty important.
Yeah, when I was poking around to learn a little bit more about them, I also learned that they went from being more of a framework for people to use to being this horizontal platform. Mm-hmm. So that's probably another big part of it, is they really focused on, as they started talking to customers, they saw more and more enterprises who wanted to build out a hosted platform rather than use a framework for developers.
And we love seeing customer stories. They resonate really well. If I'm a buyer, I want to see buyers that look like me, have made this decision. Clay here grew a lot in the last year based in New York here. So if they're using it, that's really good indication that, okay, the platform is solving that at least sales use case pretty well. Okay, so now let's jump into the core agent interface. Similar ChatGPT-like experience. On the left-hand side, you have your previous chats. In the middle, you have initiating sort of the next conversation or task. You can just ask a question. By default, it'll use their Dust agent, but you can specifically talk to an LLM. Here is where you can also invoke an agent, which we'll jump into. But at the highest level, this is where you kick off the process. You can also kick it off in Slack, which I'll talk about in a bit. But to actually create an agent, you would go into Manage Agents. And an agent is really a few things here. So you have the actual instructions themselves, so the prompt, the tools and knowledge. So again, here, knowledge is what can it consume, what can it do RAG search on and answer questions, and then the tools are, okay, how do I actually invoke an action? When I do a tool call, what can I actually manipulate or edit?
Well, also another kind of background tidbit, I guess, is as you think about how their agents are running, if you look at some of the existing ones out there, they're kind of this stateless request response model. Dust, from what I understand, is based on temporal. So they have an execution engine in the background that kind of keeps state and continues to run for long running tasks, which is pretty nice and something that I would expect to need for enterprise type use cases.
The agent we built here is hire researchers. In this case, I'm the CEO of a massive social media company that also has a really large AI research lab. Basically, we're going to go after the top 100 AI researchers in the world, and we're going to send them emails, basically cold outbound, to see if we can get them to join our team. And we have compensation packages that range from 100 million to 1 billion, which is a little wild, but it is the going rate nowadays. So we're going to see how people respond to that.
Yeah, we call this the Zuck agent, right?
I kept it a little vague. I called it hire researchers. So we've given it access to the Metis list, which was created by the TBPN podcast, which is really a list of the most in-demand, most influential, by citations at least, AI researchers in the world. So we went ahead and scraped that. I also used Dust for that. I asked it to create a CSV, and I created as part of the knowledge of this agent. And it also has access to my Gmail account, so it'll actually create drafts. So we're going to go ahead and try that. So I'm going to ask hire researcher, can you pitch the top 3 researchers on the Metis list? When it hits a tool request, it does validate if you want to go ahead and do that, which is nice from a human in the loop perspective. So you can quickly just see the actual tool call in the body of the email. Here we can see it's emailing Ilya, so I'm going to go ahead and allow that. It's creating a draft in Gmail.
Hopefully not emailing Ilya right away. We don't quite have our checkbooks ready. Yeah, I am curious which model we're using. The other part here that's nice is they are showing the thinking, at least on the right, so you can kind of check it out.
And to be fair, on the right here, I'm just using the preview experience.
I see.
I could probably just pop back and do it again in the main experience.
Yeah. And I do think that this is one of those human in the loop, kind of the Claude CLI type experience where it's like, do you want me to YOLO it, or do you want me to kind of go through? I'd love to be able to say just YOLO it, but for now you have to approve each tool, it looks like.
Okay, so here are the 2 that were created. First one is for Ilya, which makes sense. And we gave it a range, and it gave Ilya 1 billion, which was nice. And it gave the second person 500. So it's deciding what to do. Well, oddly enough, very interesting, is I didn't say it was Mark Zuckerberg, but it kind of decided that it was Mark Zuckerberg.
It must have heard me. Did you turn on the voice mode?
I did not. But it is interesting that it's behaving as an LLM would. Obviously, you should go ahead and review the email, but it has used the information about, 1, the instructions, 2 is it using Ilya's information that's in the Metis list, and it is following instructions about compensation package and asking to meet.
I think these kind of integrations are really valuable, and this is kind of this aspect that like Zapier and other kind of workflow builders too do well. I think this is kind of table stakes for any type of agent builder like this, but it is nice. It's a pretty easy flow. The part that I would do next to improve the system would probably be, how do we kind of get it to speak in your way of writing, right? And there aren't like pre-built ways to do that other than maybe to throw in some single shot examples in here, which we can grab. They have a data source option here, but it would be nice to be able to say, here's my fingerprint, here's my writing style. I want to kind of fine tune a model to kind of talk like me if I'm going to be using this regularly. And I think there's some steps in that direction, but not fully possible in here.
Yeah. The other thing I do want to highlight is there is a Slack integration. That is one thing about Dust that I do appreciate. I did install it. This wasn't fully approved by Slack. I do want to check in and see why that's the case. Okay, what I do like about the Slack experience is you can invoke the agents directly in Slack, so you can just immediately chat with the Dust agent. You can also invoke a specific agent. In this case, we're invoking the hire researchers one, and I asked a specific question about the Metis list, who's number 45, and it was given to me, someone from Thinking Machines. So what's nice is it actually is a little annoying to create an agent from scratch and make it accessible by Slack. So this is actually really nice. I can kick off that workflow. It has access to knowledge bases tools, and I can invoke it right here.
Yeah, I love this. We'll see how it changes as Slack starts to change their requirements around apps and agents, but I think this is really valuable.
Yeah, cool. Jumping back to the UX here, I can jump into some of the underlying tools. So to highlight a few other things, one piece that I do like is it's pretty easy to create a scraper on the web on public web pages. So in this case, you can put in a Docs website, and it, to a certain degree of limits, it can actually go ahead and scrape that. It'll be available, I assume, here for RAG retrieval, but you can ask questions about that. It'll be able to retrieve that. The other piece is, we've talked about the connected data, but you can also create apps. Do you want to just highlight how apps work?
Yeah, I think apps are more of the workflow builder type of interaction, whereas their agents are kind of the classical, I have a model, I have a bunch of tools, but I don't really force the model to make choices or do it in each step. The apps are more of a workflow-based process, and they're half visual design and half coding application. So you can add a block. You might have some input data. You might be triggered by an agent. An agent can use apps as tools as well, which is kind of cool. And you can even put an LLM within this app. So if you see this block, go add the chat block. You can give the LLM a prompt. You can give it some information, and you can say, hey, for this step, we're going to first grab this input, we're going to transform it, and then we're going to give it to the LLM and take some output from the LLM and do another step. It's a very Zapier-like kind of linear workflow. And you even have the ability to add a little bit of code if you want to go to add block and do JavaScript. Unfortunately, there's no Python. I think I would have preferred Python. Mm-hmm. This kind of is always the back and forth in these kind of tools, but I think there's a variety of people who use a lot of JavaScript or TypeScript, and then there's a large number of people who are used to building AI applications who use Python, and Dust so far does not have first-class support for Python within their blocks or in their SDK. They're a JavaScript-focused company.
Yeah, a few things to note here. One is I'm very nitpicky when it comes to UX and CSS, but the headers here kind of get stuck under this after a scroll. I think that's easy to fix. Two is it is a workflow tool, but we did mention it's fully linear. There isn't any branching logic. There isn't a way to have any logic here, or unless we're missing something. And then the third thing I'll just mention is it does seem like potentially this was a core flow, but they're moving more towards fully agentic behavior, using the instruction set and the tools to decide what to do in a given position. And that agent can invoke an app, but it does seem like this is becoming the secondary model, and the primary model is the full agentic. Let's use the prompt, the tools, and the knowledge base.
Which is a bit different than some of the other agent builders we've seen, right? There's a lot of agent builders that are still in this transition from, are we a workflow? Are we a more open-ended agent?
Yeah.
And I think they're doing it by basically building two different products within their product to do that, whereas others have kind of just tried to merge them together.
Yeah.
I don't know which one's better yet. I think that this one is a little bit, can be confusing sometimes because you jump into agents and you're like, wait, I built a workflow over here. How do I use it? How do I integrate with it? It doesn't show up in tools. You have to kind of assume that apps and tools are both available as tools to the agents. So there's a couple things to improve there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say products like Zapier and N8N very much start with the workflow LLMs that tend to be part of it. And then recently we saw Retool Agent specifically is closer to this, where defining the agent's behavior as a primary mechanism that's the core workflow.
What I would love is one where you can define maybe some tests, maybe some initial processes with the workflow, because that's kind of how humans tend to think about automating. They say, here are the 10 things I do. We see this, with incidents where it's like, here are the 10 things that I would do. Maybe you start to give the model the choice to do those things, right? And if you have appropriate evaluation, you can know if it's going well or not. That's another part here that's a little bit hard, is that there's not like kind of first-class eval support from what I can see. And that makes it a little bit hard to know if the agents you've built here work well. The building is kind of straightforward. It's then the testing and improving and learning over time that's going to be more complicated.
Yep. Yeah, I also was just going to highlight, there are logs and some metrics, but it's not deep like eval replays that we saw in some of the other tools.
I think it's really cool for being able to quickly put together an end-to-end agent. To me, you might reach for something like Zapier if you already have like a very specific workflow. But if you really just want to build open-ended agent with a couple tools and you're someone who maybe doesn't do a lot of development and it's sitting inside your enterprise, I could see reaching for this, automating some of my kind of rote work that I have and just seeing if the agent can do it.
Yeah, I would say building an agent quickly, I think the integrations with tools is pretty strong. I really like that I can invoke and sort of chat with the agent directly in Slack pretty quickly. I thought that was a strength. From a positioning perspective, I would love for Dust to maybe update their landing page, like update their examples. We did go through their docs. Some things are a little dated, but overall the product works. It probably tackles the sales and marketing and customer support use cases pretty well.
Yeah, but please release a Python SDK. That'd be great. Thank you.
Cool. Alrighty, that's all we had. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.